I'm going to forego any sort of intro for this video because I've been wanting to get this channel off the ground for a long time. Big announcements and big movies have come and go, and I've not done anything. And yesterday, the possibly biggest announcement I could have ever dreamt of got announced at San Diego Comic-Con. So I think today is any good time as any to bring this channel to life. So I'm Joe. This is the first episode on my channel, Wrestling with Movies. So obviously the big news I'm referring to is that Robert Downey Jr. is back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not as Iron Man, but as they said last night, as Dr. freaking Doom. Now, why is this important? Well, we live in a stage now of the MCU where there are variants and multiverses and all the other kinds of stuff, and we've seen it done already. This weekend, particularly in Deadpool and Wolverine, we saw a different Wolverine from the one that died in Logan. But this is different because Robert Downey Jr. is not coming back to play another Tony Stark, as far as we know, and they said he's playing Victor Von Doom, which means he's literally just casted as a different character now.
We give you the one person who could play Victor Von Doom.
And that's huge for so many reasons. It's like, is he a Tony Stark variant that was born and raised to become Doctor Doom, or a Tony Stark variant that lost his way and just becomes the opposite of what Iron Man stood for, which is Doctor Doom? I mean, they're very similar. They both have metal suits. They're both men of science. They're both geniuses. They both are billionaires. I mean, it was obvious we knew Doctor Doom was coming because of what's happening in Secret Wars, but there's so much other baggage attached to this that we'll get into. This has to be the backup plan, right? Because we knew 2 years ago at Comic-Con, they announced that their plans were to make Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. And based on that fact, we knew that Kang was going to be the central villain of either both or one of those, obviously, because Kang is in the title of the fifth one. But that said, when they tried laying the groundwork for Kang in Loki and in Ant-Man, I think in Loki it works really well because He Who Remains is a really cool character. I think Jonathan Majors played it really well, and the intricacies of the TVA and all that other stuff that was in that show in both seasons really got me excited because that's one of the best things they've ever created, honestly, especially post Endgame. But then the real world happened, right? Jonathan Majors got arrested. They fired him, and now we're in limbo. And apparently, when Loki ended, people were saying, "Oh, they locked themselves into this Kang thing and they can't get out of it." Well, now they had to get out of it, but also I did think that's completely false because what part of Loki season 2 ending did they say was locked into Kang? They literally said, He Who Remains is gone, Loki is now in charge of the multiversal tree, and the TVA is monitoring Kang. So they have a lid on it. So we're kind of just waiting to see what happens. So now we're in a place where they had to pivot, and I don't know when this pivot took place. It could have been when Ant-Man 3 bombed, and I gotta say, it wasn't because of Kang that Ant-Man 3 bombed, I don't think. It was just a soulless product that was filmed clearly in a volume with no really creativity put into any of it, right? And I don't even have that movie on Blu-ray, and I have everything else. This whole set right here is all MCU movies, and I have the rest of the next phases throughout, but I don't have Ant-Man 3. I don't have it for a reason. Don't have it because I don't like it. But Kang was not the problem. The problem is that it just was not good. But then Kang became the problem by the real world circumstances of Jonathan Majors. So now we're here. And again, we knew Secret Wars was happening, so they had to introduce Doctor Doom at some point, right? But to do it in this way is so shocking. It's ballsy, and it's a gamble for sure. But then again, Kang was a gamble too. They were expecting audiences to kind of just take this one guy to play a million versions of the same character throughout time and space. And that is a lot to ask your audience who's only known one villain playing one version of himself in Thanos. That was the big thing. We knew what we were building to back then, way back in the first Avengers movie. Whereas now we were expected to kind of just assume the next villain, and all things they were throwing at us either touched on it a little bit or didn't at all. Because some projects didn't. It's a weird thing. So I'm wondering when this plan even came into play. I think they always had the Robert Downey Jr. card in their pocket because they knew they were going to bring him back at some point as a Tony Stark variant, as a hologram Tony Stark that was just kind of an AI thing, any sort of thing like that. But now they're doing this as the villain, and I think it's genius. I think it's so it's giving people what they want while also not ruining what they made. I don't think this makes what he did in Endgame any less important. I don't think it minimizes the impact of that. I don't think it does anything on that level. What I do think it does is it gives people what they want by seeing their favorite character, their favorite actor, character, whatever, back in the universe that has lost them. And now he's doing the complete opposite of what he did before. He's not the hero now. He's the villain. And I think that old adage from The Dark Knight,
you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
except Iron Man did die the hero, and now he's just reborn as the villain, which I think is a really cool concept. And we'll get into more why I think that. When I heard it, it didn't strike me as desperate, even though I'll talk about some concerns, but like it hit me right here. Like, I'm wearing the shirt. I'm wearing the shirt for a reason. Iron Man was my favorite. It brought us in. This movie brought us all in to the MCU, and it's almost like guy that brought us here is now the one we're supposed to hate. And I think that's really interesting. Questions everyone's asking is this a desperation move? And yes and no. On one hand, the cards they were dealt did not hit. Like, they completely failed. Like, they just, everything they put out, and I don't think everything they put out is bad. Like, there are some things I loved, obviously, but the main story was not coming together the way they had assumed it would, which I'm guessing was the Kang stuff, right? Now that went out the window. So now the plan is, the Hail Mary play, we'll call it, I guess, is to call Robert Downey Jr. But again, I feel like you don't just pull that out of a hat. Like, they may, but like, since Endgame, Robert Downey Jr. has been even, more well regarded than maybe any other actor in Hollywood, especially after his performance in Oppenheimer, right? So he's got the Oscar now. It's like, why did he come back? And maybe they just sent him a check and said, Robert, write down whatever number you want. We'll pay it as long as you do this for us. That's entirely possible. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it's not. The other big question is, does pulling this move diminish Tony Stark's legacy? And it really depends. If they said he's playing Victor Von Doom, so that implies that he's not Tony Stark. Okay, that's fine. But the problem with that is they can't have that version of the character of Doctor Doom, played by Robert Downey Jr., look at or interact with any of the Avengers that would know him, specifically Spider-Man or Thor or whoever is left that would know Iron Man's face. I mean, they all do, so I guess it wouldn't matter. But like, Spider-Man specifically had him as a father figure, as a mentor. Just, he was one of the first people to see him as he was dying, right before Pepper. So you can't have him. You can't just ignore that fact. You can't just be like. You can't have a one-off be like, hey, you look like the guy I knew. You can't do that. It has to be like impactful. But I feel like the other hand is like, the only way to do that is to explain it is like, why does he look like Tony? Is because it's a Tony Stark variant that was raised as Doctor Doom. Maybe like the line from Age of Ultron where he says,
I see a suit of armor around the world.
Sounds like a cold world, Tony.
I've seen colder.
maybe he does that. Maybe he that version of Tony does that. He goes crazy, becomes bad, and is leading an army of Iron Man bots and just starts calling himself Doctor Doom. I think that's a little cheap, especially because I know people are really attached to the actual Doctor Doom character, so just turning Iron Man into him may turn a lot of people off. I think the other half of this is, if he is not Tony at all, then you gave Robert Downey Jr. a new playbook, a new playground, new sandbox to play with, where he can just act his ass off, try to be the complete anti-Tony Stark by being Doctor Doom. You know, none of his mannerisms. He doesn't quip. He's pure evil. Like, I mean, it's a Marvel movie. Everybody's going to quip. But, like, do it in a way that is just completely not Tony Stark-like. And if you don't think Robert Downey Jr. can do that, then you don't know who he is. Because, like I said, watch Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer clearly shows he can be a villain, because he's literally the bad guy in that. And I know it's a historical movie, but every movie, when you break it down to the bare bones, has a protagonist and an antagonist. J. Robert Oppenheimer is the protagonist of that movie, despite the fact that he made the weapon that will be our collective demise. Besides the point. But Robert Downey Jr. plays Louis Strauss, who is trying to get Oppenheimer, like, out of the, trying to completely blame him and take away his security clearance and all that. He plays that so good. There's the one scene in black and white where he finds out what Oppenheimer did.
Oh, the atomic bomb. He wanted to be the man who moved the earth. He talks about putting the nuclear genie back in the bottle. Well, I'm here to tell you that I know. J. Robert Oppenheimer, and if he could do it all over, he'd do it all the same. You know he's never once said that he regrets Hiroshima? He'd do it all over. Why? Because it made him the most important man who ever lived.
Watch that scene and tell me he can't play Doctor Doom differently than he played Iron Man. Like, it's entirely possible, and I think that's probably why he did it. I think, and maybe I'm being too sincere here, I think Robert Downey Jr. would not come back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe if it diminished what he already did, and it was the same. I don't think he would just come back revived, come back to just do what he did again and just be alive again. I think he thinks that's lazy. I think he thinks that would disappoint the fans. I think what they pitched him is, we'll bring you back as Doctor Doom. I think that really made him want to sink his teeth into that because it's so different. He can play. He can just do everything different. He doesn't need to be he does not need to have a moral compass. He does not need to have any attachment to anybody. He could just be an evil person. That's like what villains are missing these days. Not every villain has to have a redemption arc. It's just they can just be evil. Like, again, to reference Dark Knight again, Joker in that movie is pure evil. Like, he's smart, and you could say what he's doing is even correct, but that's not to say he's not evil. He's crazy. But that means it's a different villain. But still, my point is, villains don't always need to have a silver lining. They don't always need to have a good side. And that's the worry, that if it's Tony, he can just become good again. That would be lazy, because then where do you land after that? He's Iron Man again. He just is good now. He uses his Doctor Doom suit for good. Then what is that? That's these things. That's Iron Man. So that's what I don't want for this. And that's the main concern people have. I understand that. So it's got to be so different, yet familiar. It's a really, really hard line to toe. But I think they could pull it off. I think, especially with the Russos back, who arguably have written the best versions of like the big three in the MCU, meaning Thor, Cap, and Iron Man, arguably written them the best. So I have no doubt that they can, again, as a villain for Robert Downey Jr. specifically. Now we're at a point where this year alone, there's only one movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, and that really doesn't, having seen it, spoiler alert, doesn't really connect to anything. It could certainly lead to stuff, but it doesn't really connect to anything MCU-wise. It's more a love letter to the Fox movies. If you haven't seen it, you know. If you haven't seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I won't spoil the big things here, but know that I loved it. Saw it 3 times. I don't think they were ever gone. I just think they lost people because they were putting out too much stuff at one time, and stuff that people weren't interested in. Are you telling me that people, the like average people, not just comic book nerds like you and myself, aren't going to go see a Robert Downey Jr. starring as Doctor Doom? People are going to see that. People are going to see that because hopefully they tease or introduce him in Fantastic Four, which we know is coming next year. I'm excited for that because it looks like an actual fresh, good take on the Fantastic Four, unlike the 2 we've had past, especially the one in 2015 that everybody wants to forget about. The cast looks great, and the footage they showed yesterday at Comic-Con apparently blew some people's minds. It looks really fun. It's retro. It's in the 60s. It's whatever. I'm excited for that. So I think it's a big splash for sure. And maybe they just did it for splash sake. They knew people were counting on this panel to excite the masses and to get people pumped about the MCU again. And it worked. It's leading to the most like divisive I've ever seen film Twitter in a very long time. Maybe since like Last Jedi, Batman vs Superman era, where you either hated it or you loved it. There's no middle ground. It's the same thing. I've seen hate. I've seen love. I've seen people say that it completely ruins Endgame, just as Deadpool and Wolverine ruins Logan. It does not ruin Logan, by the way. And it's not going to ruin Endgame. I really don't think so. I think they know, especially because the people involved. Kevin Feige is smart. The people at Marvel are smart. They're not stupid. Misguided at times? Sure. They're not stupid. You can't create this giant billion-dollar thing by accident. It just doesn't happen. Like, there's just no way. So, with Robert Downey Jr. back as Doctor Doom, I expect the hype to build. I expect them to lay the groundwork that actually is befitting of somebody playing, of this caliber of person, especially to Marvel people, playing this villain. I hope it works out. I really, really do. Because nothing would make me happier than to see Robert Downey Jr. succeed twice in this universe, as a hero and as a villain. I think it would be the first time anyone's done that I can think of. What famous superhero has also been like a killer villain? I know it's happened before, like Christian Bale's Batman. He was also Gore, but nobody remembers Gore that much. Like Thor: Love and Thunder is a very forgettable movie. So Deadpool and Wolverine restored my hope a little bit. I know it's mostly a joke, and it's supposed to be because it's a Deadpool movie, but and especially they call out all the stuff I'm telling you right now. They fourth wall break, how it's been miss after miss. There's a line in the movie where somebody says, "I think it's been steadily good since Endgame." I'm like, they're very self-aware. They know the fans aren't happy. So now what they decided to do is give the fans what they want. It's some sort of familiarity while also becoming something new. I think that's smart, and I hope it works out. That's all I gotta say. Last thing I want to talk about is this right here. I've recently read this Jonathan Hickman run of Secret Wars. I never read it before, and I've heard, in breakdown videos of everything that's come out since, that it's important. It's an important read for what's coming because this is clearly what they're adapting. And if that's true, I'm very excited because you cannot tell this story, as you well know, without Doctor Doom. And the fact that the Doctor Doom now is Robert Downey Jr., I can see it. I can see him doing everything in this book. There's a scene in this book where he meets some sort of version of Thanos. I think it's a good one, actually. And as God Emperor Doom, as he's called in this, just literally grabs Thanos' neck and rips his spine out. Now imagine that happens in some sort of scene as Robert Downey Jr. and Doctor Doom. He killed Thanos once as Iron Man. He can do it again as Doctor Doom. I think that's such a cool thing, and it's just I can't help but be excited. I cannot sit here and tell you I am not excited to see Robert Downey Jr. back. He's the anchor being of the in the real world of the MCU. Like, and that's the term from Deadpool and Wolverine, but it's true. Robert Downey Jr., there's nothing without him. So I don't see why it's a problem. I don't see why people are hating. I understand legacy and all that, but I don't think they'll do it in a way that would completely discredit it. And I think Deadpool and Wolverine is proof that they care about stuff they didn't even make. They didn't make Logan. So why would they discard Endgame? There's no proof of me to think they would do that. Because they didn't, if you saw the movie, you kind of understand they desecrated it and honored him in the same way. It's really weird, but really creative and really funny. You have to go see it to understand. But in this case, I think they hold this movie in such high regard, especially the people who directed it, who are now back directing this. They won't ruin it. I'm fully confident in that fact, in that assumption, I should say. But again, I cannot be excited. I'm very happy that he's back. And it's going to divide the internet no matter what they do. It could be horrible. It could be fantastic. People are going to be like, well, was this necessary? And other people are going to be like, well, this was freaking awesome. I'm so happy this happened. I don't know where I'll land. I'm leaning this will be freaking awesome. That's what I hope. Because, and then, once we're done with Secret Wars, I think there'll be a hard reset and everything. And that's when these people will actually finally be retired, you would think. So, because I don't think he'll be our Doctor Doom forever. I think eventually there'll be a new one. There'll be a new actor. Would I have just been more excited if they had casted Cillian Murphy, for example, as Doctor Doom? Hell yeah, he's great too. Would have been awesome. But the fact that they did this, they pulled this out and just completely shocked the world with this move. What more can you ask for? That's what you want from this stuff. It's a comic book. It's not supposed to be so serious. You gotta take it. It's fun. You telling me that Robert Downey Jr. can't have fun playing freaking? You telling me that he can't have fun doing this? You telling me you don't want to see that? I want to see that. I don't know if we will see that, but we're at a point now where anything is possible, literally, in the multiverse, right? So, just you gotta have fun with it. And I understand if you've been scorned, if you saw Eternals and sat there thinking, "What the frick happened to my precious MCU?" I understand, but the people back in charge and the people writing the road forward, who paved the road. The Russos made the 4 best MCU movies, arguably, right? So that's all I got to say. I hope Robert Downey Jr. gives this his all and gives it in such a way that we forget he was even Iron Man and we only see Doom. It's the only way you can do it. It's the only way I think he'd want to do it, because that's just who he is. He said at the panel,
New mask. Same task. What can I tell you? I like playing complicated characters.
what more do you want? Well, those are my thoughts on Robert Downey Jr. becoming Doctor Doom. And I hope for the best. I really do. Thanks for watching. This has been my first video, Wrestling with Movies. Incredibly nervous filming this, but I had a lot to say, and I'm glad I got it out. It felt good. It felt right, and I'm hoping to keep doing this. I might scramble together a Deadpool and Wolverine review, but it might be a little too late because, there's Easter egg breakdowns videos out there and a million other reviews. But if you want to hear my thoughts on it, I'll put it out, but we'll see. I'm also going to link my TikTok in the description below. Please follow me there. I post all MCU content basically, or pretty much anything that I feel. Some Game of Thrones / House of the Dragon stuff is in there as well. DC when it's important. Pretty big lack of that these days, isn't there? But we'll see. But yeah, thanks for watching, and this has been Wrestling with Movies.